The Nasdaq closing down nearly 5% today. Let's bring in tech investor Roger McNamee from Elevation Partners. Roger, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. I guess we'll get to the pullback in tech stocks in a moment. Also pretty interested to speak to you about the new Facebook policy announced today. And we had Nick Clegg on earlier in the show. What do you make of those new policies? Are you overall delighted to see that they are taking action, or critical that it's too little too late?
Well, it's definitely too little too late. And the issue that we're dealing with here, I think, is very simple, which is Facebook's announcement is a recognition that they've played an outsized role in undermining our democratic processes. The problem with this is that the way Zuck framed the solution, it's not just too little too late. It's really a solution designed to appease people who are not looking closely at what the problem is. If we think about, Facebook's basically looking for absolution as opposed to solving the systemic problems that lead to this. And what worries me today is much less about political advertising on Facebook than it is about the denial of COVID, which has undermined our pandemic response. It is the organization of QAnon groups privately, the merger of those into the real world, forming militias, which are been occupying portions of Portland and Kenosha. There's so many bad things going on Facebook right now that contribute to undermining democracy, that this little thing is just essentially focused on a sideline.
Roger, I mean, that said, I guess they are in a very difficult position based on what the laws and regulations are, which is not very much. And whichever way they go, they're going to meet criticism in both directions. So when you look at the state of play where we are, coming into another election, 4 years has passed since the last one and all the problems that arose there. Who is more to blame for the fact that we haven't solved this in entirety? Facebook or lawmakers and regulators for not changing the rules that govern them?
Well, demonstrably, Facebook is responsible for the problem. If you think about how our government is currently structured, with Trump in the White House, Republicans controlling the Senate, Democrats controlling the House, that was never a scenario in which you were likely to see radical change in regulation of an industry that historically has not required any regulation. So in my mind, the issue here for Facebook is a very simple one. Do they want to be responsible for tens of thousands of deaths in the COVID pandemic because our nation's response to the pandemic is unable to get off the ground, uniquely among all developed countries? Do they also want to be responsible for the fact that militias are organizing on their platform, that QAnon is using their platform to literally, they're 3 to 5 million people, according to NBC, in QAnon and Facebook groups? And Facebook's own data says 64% of the people who join extremist groups do so because Facebook recommends that they do so. So Facebook's responsible for 2 to 3 million people joining QAnon, and QAnon has now infected these militia, and that's become an issue in the streets, and people have died. And to me, the notion that Facebook needs a law to tell them to do the right thing is laughable. I mean, it makes me incredibly sad that the employees are not in open revolt, and that Zuck and Sheryl do not see what the right path is here. I mean, you have to ask, what kind of a country do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a country where militia roam free, armed, terrorizing innocent people? Do you want to live in a country where we have 1,000 people dying a day of a pandemic that every other country in the world has at least wrestled into some level of control? I mean, that strikes me as insane.